The emerald heart of Africa was breathing, slow, deep, ancient. The canopy above swayed in rhythm with a wind older than memory, and the earth pulsed with a heartbeat that belonged to both predator and prey, to both danger and beauty. It was here, under a sky that seemed too vast for human comprehension, that a silent battle between life and death had begun. The jungle was not screaming, no, it was holding its breath, as if even the leaves dared not whisper. A young gorilla, barely old enough to understand the cruelty of the world, was ensnared in the merciless embrace of an African rock python. Each breath it tried to take became a war against the crushing coils. Each movement drained what little strength remained. And yet, this was not a story where fate would quietly close its book. For in that same moment, a lone human, a shadow in the wilderness, stepped forward, no rifle in hand, no spear. Only resolve, that ancient, stubborn human defiance against watching innocents perish. This wasn't just animal rescue. It was a test of faith between man and beast, between fear and courage, between the instinct to survive and the will to protect. And as the verse from Proverbs 12:10 whispered to the heart, "The righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel." What would follow would not just save a life, it would etch itself into the memory of the forest as a moment when two worlds reached across the chasm of species and touched. Our story's beginning was stitched into the very fabric of the Congo Basin, where life bursts forth in every direction, in the trill of unseen birds, in the flash of a monkey leaping between trees, in the shimmer of sunlight spilling through leaves like molten gold. This was the world of Ranger David. For 15 years he had walked its hidden arteries, boots pressing into soil as rich as memory, eyes trained to read the language of the land. He did not simply know the forest, he belonged to it. Every rustle, every broken twig, every shifting shadow spoke to him. David was not merely a park ranger. He was the forest's quiet guardian, its historian, its watchman. His days were an endless cycle of patrols, tracking, and vigilance. He had given his youth to protecting gorillas from the poacher's bullet and the chainsaw's hunger. He had seen life bloom and life fade, yet he never let the weight of loss harden his spirit. Each morning, before the dawn's mist dissolved, into the humid air, he would sling his worn backpack over his shoulder and step into a living cathedral of green. But this morning was different. Somewhere deep within, a whisper coiled around his thoughts. The forest was too quiet. Not the peaceful stillness of rest, but a heavy, unnatural silence, as if the jungle itself feared to speak. He was tracking a family of land gorillas he had known for years, recognizing each by their faces, their movements, their little quirks. And yet, where their laughter and rustling should have been, there was nothing. The air felt weighted with a presence he could not name. He tried to dismiss it, blaming a shift in the wind or an early departure of the troop, but experience told him otherwise. It was the kind of quiet that comes before the storm. As Psalm 36:6 echoed in his mind, "You, Lord, preserve both people and animals," David's steps quickened. Something was wrong, and he was about to find out what. He moved deeper. Every sense sharpened. His eyes scanned the labyrinth of foliage, his ears strained for the slightest sound. He knew this land could change from breathtaking beauty to lethal danger in an instant, a place where predators waited unseen, where storms could drown the world in minutes. But danger had never deterred him. Love for the creatures under his protection was stronger than fear. Memories flickered in his mind, like the day he'd watched Titan, the massive silverback patriarch of this family, shepherd his troop across a treacherous river. The young ones riding on the backs of the females while Titan stood midstream like a living wall against the current. That day had filled David with awe. Today, however, all was replaced by a growing knot of dread. Then it happened. A sound. Low, guttural, and raw. The cry of a gorilla in pain. It punched the air, making his chest tighten. He ran, branches slapped against his arms. Roots threatened to trip him. He pushed through a curtain of vines and into a small clearing where the sun sliced through the canopy in trembling shards of gold. And there, the sight froze him. A juvenile gorilla, no more than 4 years old, was locked in the deadly coils. Of a python so thick it looked like it had been carved from living muscle? The snake's head was poised in predatory stillness, eyes cold, its body pulsing with each constricting squeeze. The young gorilla's eyes were wide with terror, its mouth open in silent cries between gasps. David's mind calculated the stakes in seconds. Pythons do not kill fast. They kill slow, stealing the air from their prey until life fades. He knew the risks. One wrong move and the python could strike at him. The panicked gorilla could injure him in its struggle. But then, something shifted in the scene, something beyond biology. Standing in the shadows, half hidden in the undergrowth, was Titan and the rest of the troop. They were watching. Not with aggression, not with warning, but with an intensity that pierced him. They did not charge. They did not flee. They simply stared, eyes wide, fixed on him, almost as if asking help. In that moment, David felt something. Ancient rise in him, a force stronger than reason. The verse from Isaiah 11:6 came to him like a voice. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, and a little child will lead them. In the blink of an eye, he knew he would risk everything. David began his approach not with the reckless sprint of panic, but with the slow, deliberate grace of a man who understood that every step he took would echo in the minds of those watching. The air was thick, not just with humidity, but with a tension so sharp it could be felt in the bones. He spoke softly, his voice a low, steady murmur, like the wind that moves through tall grass without disturbing its roots. He wasn't speaking for himself. He was speaking for them, for the young gorilla whose life hung on a knife's edge, for the python whose instincts were as ancient as the soil beneath their feet, and for the family of gorillas whose eyes tracked his every move. He knew the truth that few outsiders ever understood. In the wild, actions speak louder than fear. The vulnerable point of a python is its head, but to reach it without being bitten, without further frightening the gorilla, required the patience of a sculptor and the precision of a surgeon. This was no act of madness. It was the distilled courage of 15 years spent walking among these creatures, learning their ways, honoring their boundaries, and swearing a silent oath to protect them. As seemed to whisper through the rustling leaves, defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. David braced himself, not only for the impossible rescue, but for the fragile trust hanging in the balance. He began to circle the struggling pair, his boots pressing into the damp soil, his mind a rapid-fire map of snake behavior and gorilla psychology. Each movement was measured, each breath controlled, as though the entire forest was holding its breath with him. The python shifted, its head momentarily exposed as it adjusted its constriction, and David saw his chance. He moved in, no machete, no tranquilizer dart, just his bare hands reaching for the thick, cold body of the serpent. His fingers locked firmly behind its head in one swift, decisive motion. The python's response was instantaneous. Its coils tightened in a last-ditch surge of crushing force, the young gorilla's eyes squeezing shut against the pressure, but David's grip held. His other hand began the grueling task of peeling the coils away, one by one. Each segment a contest of strength against a creature evolved to overpower antelope and warthogs with ease. The young gorilla whimpered, its breath shallow. Yet there was a subtle shift in its body, its thrashing slowed, almost as if it sensed that help had arrived. And then came the most extraordinary thing. From his post in the shadows, Titan, the silverback, the patriarch, the king of this patch of forest, remained motionless. His massive arms hung at his sides, his dark eyes locked on David. There was no pounding of the chest, no display of dominance, only a deep, low rumble that resonated in the air like distant thunder. It was not a threat, it was not a warning. It was something else. A sound that to David felt like a question and an answer in one. We are watching, we are trusting, do not fail. The rest of the troop stayed still as stone, their silence more powerful than any cry. It was a moment of suspended reality, a fragile bridge between species that could collapse with a single wrong move. The coils loosened, slowly, painfully, under David's relentless effort. Sweat ran down his temple, his arms trembling from the strain, but he did not let go. Quick flashes of the moment would tell the story. The close-up of the gorilla's frightened eyes, the taut lines of David's face, the unreadable depth in Titan's gaze. At last, with one final surge of strength, the python's grip broke. Disoriented and defeated, the great snake slid away into the undergrowth, melting into shadow as though the earth had reclaimed it. The young gorilla lay still for a moment, its chest rising and falling in quick, shallow bursts. Then, with effort, it pushed itself upright. The trembling in its limbs was real, but so was the clarity in its eyes. It looked at David, truly looked, and in that gaze was neither fear nor aggression. Only something ancient and quiet, recognition. It gave a soft, uncertain whimper, then turned toward the safety of its family. Titan stepped forward to meet it, his massive hand brushing over the young one's shoulder in a gesture that was unmistakably gentle. A low hum of reassurance passed through him, echoed by the rest of the troop as they closed ranks around their rescued kin, before they disappeared into the green depths. Titan paused. He turned, locking eyes with David once more. It was a look, stripped bare of the wild's usual barriers, no posturing, no threat, only acknowledgement. Slowly, the great silverback inclined his head in a movement that felt deliberate, weighted, and final. Then, without another sound, he turned and vanished into the shadows. The rest of the troop melting into the jungle behind him, David stood alone in the clearing, the humid air heavy with the memory of what had just transpired. The ground still bore the imprint of the struggle, but it was the invisible imprint on his heart that would remain forever. This wasn't just a dramatic wildlife rescue. It was proof, living proof, that trust can be forged in the most unlikely of moments. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. And that empathy has the power to bridge the divide between species. As he began the walk back, seemed to settle over him like a blessing. But ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you. In that clearing, with nothing but instinct, courage, and mutual respect, a man and a gorilla family had taught one another something the modern world often forgets. We are not separate worlds, we are one creation. And in that unity lies our greatest chance at survival. If this emotional, true story of wild bond and survival touched your heart, remember, every act of compassion, no matter how small, ripples outward. Like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming animal videos, touching animal stories, and dramatic wildlife rescues that remind us of the incredible human and animal connection. Because sometimes the greatest miracles happen when we choose not to dominate nature, but to stand beside it.